Pokemon is a massive franchise, and I don't need to introduce you to it, but egads is it huge! And being as gargantuan as it is, it's no wonder that fans have speculated on just about everything. Like every single tiny detail. Like what's up with Kamala? Is it actually the log with a koala-shaped decoy? Sure seems that way. But today we are covering one of the most popular speculations. One that surrounds the classic Ash Ketchum, the protagonist of the anime. The question these fans try to answer: how does he never age? First things first, the ever-popular joke of "he never ages" is easily written off. It's an anime, a cartoon, a never-ending cartoon that loops around and retcons previous seasons. Take a look at The Simpsons even. Bart should be middle-aged by now.
Eat my shorts.
All right, I'll eat your shorts!
But there is one major difference between The Simpsons and Pokemon. The Simpsons always keep everyone the same age, while in Pokemon, some characters have changed their looks and gotten older. But not Ash. Not in looks or canon. But he's had birthdays.
Don't you know what today is, Pikachu? This is the day we first met. The day we first became friends.
But those birthdays were later retconned.
Home to this young man, 10-year-old Ash Ketchum.
And yet, other characters stay older. Until they suddenly don't.
Hey, Ash! How have you been doing?
A more recent example is in the Sun and Moon anime. Professor Kukui gets married, and then much later in Pokemon Journeys, he introduces his baby to Ash. And the baby is clearly a few months old, at least. So it's been a minimum of 10 months, more likely a whole year, and yet, no note of Ash growing up. Pokemon Journeys brings up a lot actually. Its whole premise is going all over the world, and Ash is re-meeting past characters. So are all of his past adventures still canon? I guess so, but even if we say each episode is one day, first of all, my god is Ash's life busy. But secondly, there's over 1,100 episodes as of right now. That's 3 years, and that's not including the movies or the specials or anything. Ash should be 13 by now if that were the case. Puberty changes! But perhaps there is some explanation, like in the very first generation in the Pokemon franchise, in the very first episode of the Pokemon anime, fittingly named Pokemon I Choose You. Ash and his newfound Pikachu see a Ho-Oh in the sky. If we go into Ho-Oh's Pokedex entry, found in Pokemon Gold and Silver, we find that, if found, the Pokemon can grant any viewer eternal happiness. So, could we assume that Ash would be eternally happy if he were on this Pokemon journey forever? And that's why he hasn't aged? Granted immortality by this Phoenix? Oh, to be a kid forever. Just think of the tax benefits. Oh no, I'm old now, aren't I? However, as with any theory, there are flaws to be found. Even though Ho-Oh flew right in front of Ash's bulging anime eyes, how would he have even known what the Pokemon was? Even the Pokedex had no clue at the time. Ash never sees the Pokemon again until the second generation of the anime, multiple seasons later, and when he does meet it, he seems so excited and dumbfounded when hearing about it for the first time. So we can assume that Ash completely forgot about its existence. Oftentimes, like with wishing on a shooting star or blowing out your birthday candles, you have to be actively making your wish in your head for it to even have a chance of being granted. And I'm sure that's probably the case with this Ho-Oh too. Not to mention, Ash just got started on his Pokemon journey. This is the first episode of the show. He just got literally disemboweled by Spearow, and I know I'd start second guessing myself at that point. So not actively wishing for the journey to never end or to be immortal. Yee. So while it's a flawed theory, all theories are flawed really, but it is a nice one to think about. Unlike this next theory, which tends to be the most common and almost the most disturbing. This honestly seems like it came straight out of a creepypasta for some reason. Yep, you guessed it. Ash has been in a coma the whole time. What fun. According to this troubling theory, in the first few episodes of the anime, Ash is electrocuted by one of Pikachu's attacks, most likely this massive one, and slips into a coma. It should be noted that this is right before he sees the Ho-Oh. Perhaps the Ho-Oh then is it granting eternal happiness to this boy that just got put into a coma. Like, hey, here I am, have some nice dreams. From this point forward, in the remainder of the show, it all takes place inside of Ash's subconscious. Now that may be a bit confusing, so I'll try to spell it out for you. Because Ash spends the remainder of his show in this deep sleep, he never seems to physically age. But only mentioning that is just scratching the surface, as this theory has much more to talk about. This also explains why there are so many Officer Jennies and Nurse Joys around the many regions. Brains have a hard time coming up with faces you haven't seen before, and being as young as he is and growing up in a small town, there's a good chance he only knows of one nurse and one police officer, so in his dream, they all look like that. This seems to be the only logical explanation for this occurrence. Even Even octo babies don't all look the same as they grow up, and yet there are hundreds of perfectly identical Officer Jennys and Nurse Joys? I don't buy it. Some fans have added to this by stating that Brock also represents Ash's supposed sexuality. This explains why Brock can't get into a relationship with anybody throughout the series. Ash is about at that age where he would start to notice girls, but have no clue as to why or how to act accordingly. Kind of like Brock. Then they say the main Team Rocket members add to this by representing purity, as they are the only Team Rocket members who wear white outfits and are also always up to shenanigans that are quite unpure. They're a good moral example of what not to do. And then Pikachu represents humanity, supposedly, at least when he runs away from Ash in the show. There are all sorts of other symbols too, but that's not what this video is about. But the other big thing is, how is it possible for this one kid, Ash, to meet every single legendary and mythical Pokemon? He has saved the day, saved the region, saved the world, saved the galaxy multiple times. He even saved God. No way would one person ever be able to achieve all of these things, let alone at age 10. So these adventures we are seeing in the show aren't actually happening. They are Ash's dreams. Being a Pokemon-obsessed boy, he probably read about all of these legendaries before getting knocked into a coma. And this perfectly explains the whole time thing. Dreams can sometimes span weeks, when in reality, it's been only a few minutes of you being asleep. It's incredibly common, and this would explain why Ash can be experiencing all of these events for the amount of time that they take, but his body is staying the same. He's dreamed for several years, when in reality, he's been in a coma for like a week or two. So who knows? When Ash finally wakes up from this intense coma, not only will he suffer brain damage, but he will also have to live the remainder of his life knowing that none of his accomplishments were ever actually achieved, and none of his friends were real. So, while yes, the theory does explain everything well, it's just dumb. Nearly every cartoon can be explained as, so-and-so is dead or in a coma. I am very smart. Because lots of these shows have fantastical events that aren't possible in the real world. So it clearly must be a dream! It's so uninspired and uninteresting, and I hope the franchise never hints towards that being the case at all, ever. Now here's another theory. At the end of the day, we all age one day. Age is a number and term created by people to show how long a person or animal or thing has been alive or existed. But what if the Pokemon universe just has a different perception of the word age? In the arbitrary age theory, these theorists talk about just that. Perhaps the Pokemon universe replaces the term status with age. If you've just gone into the Pokemon world or fit the qualifications to do so, you're considered 10, perhaps a sort of pseudo level 10. You are a level 10 person. You have just enough experience points to be considered 10. 10-year-old Ash Ketchum. Then, once you have kids or so, you'd be 20. Once you have grandkids, you'd be 50. This would be the reason that Brock is 15 despite looking and acting much older. He takes care of his younger siblings in place of his parents, but hasn't had kids of his own or even a significant other of his own, thus being between 10 and 20. He's 15, even though he looks maybe 25. All in all, this doesn't seem to make too much sense at first glance, and like, how the heck would society work like this? But hey, it's just a theory. Here's another. Remember the first Pokemon movie? It's one of my favorites, and this theory comes straight from the heart of that film. In the movie, Mew and Mewtwo completely annihilate Ash, turning him into stone, and all of the Pokemon tears resurrect him. It's as if nothing ever happened, right? Well, while in stone, Ash is petrified. What if this also essentially petrified him in a time sense? What if that petrification caused Ash to never age from this point forward? The Pokemon tears let him move around and experience things again, but his cellular growth is still petrified. We know that the show takes place across multiple years. Ash and Pikachu celebrate their 1-year anniversary together in Gen 2, but then the narrator says Ash is 10 again in Gen 5. So he is still 10 in a 10-year-old's body, but the rest of the world ages around him. Really, it's just the Ho-Oh theory again, but with Mewtwo. So here's another theory. When you're watching any anime or show, you have to remember it's just that, a show. In the slowed time theory, the theorists talk about just that. The claim is, while the Pokemon anime takes years in our world, it takes much less time in the Pokemon world. An entire season of Pokemon in our world may only be a month, maybe 2 weeks in theirs. However, this theory doesn't ever explain Ash and Pikachu's anniversary, so there's clearly more speculation to be done. And then these new Pokemon movies make it all so much more confusing as well. Ash is starting his journey again, but he's not. Is this a reboot? He has just Pikachu? He's traveling alone? wandering the world helping people in need. If anything, these new movies point us more towards Ash being a sort of mythical figure, a wandering spirit of a skilled and helpful Pokemon trainer who travels the world helping those in need. He doesn't age because he is merely a mythical phenomenon. Just like the seemingly immortal legendaries, Ash is a projection of a boy acting out the will of a higher power, keeping fate in check. Or it is just a show, and Ash likely remains 10, as that is the show's target audience. I mean, Elmo is still like 3, isn't he? He should be like 50 now. Perhaps the reason we are so fixated on Ash's age is because of all of the other shows that were around it. Yu-Gi-Oh!, Naruto, and Digimon all had their protagonists grow up with the target audience, and heck, the Pokemon games did so for a while there too. Pokemon Black and White had aged up protagonists specifically for that purpose, according to Game Freak, but that also happened to be right when they reiterated that Ash is still 10. Perhaps that is to say that the games are intended for a much wider audience than the anime is, which I can see for sure, especially in Gen 5. The anime had a habit of...
You'll never be able to beat my Servine! 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 It's Servine!
It's seemingly aimed at much younger kids again, and there's nothing wrong with that. Lots of producers choose to age their franchises up with their audience, and lots of others don't. They stick with what they know works, and they stick with a particular age group. And to stay relatable, they keep Ash young and incompetent. But what do you think? Have anything to add? And yes, this is a remake of a much older video. About a month ago, YouTube blocked the older one worldwide, so I decided to just remake it. Hope you liked it, and until next time, never stop using your noggin.
That's Servine! It's gotta be!